How's it going? I'm Jared Gillis. Welcome to another All About RVs. Today, I wanted to talk to you about the topic of having spare parts on your RV, like having a spare tire on your RV. There are some other things that are not a bad idea to keep on hand so that you can have spare parts so you don't get stranded with your RV or stuck in a situation that you don't want to be stuck in without having these parts with you. So we're going to be going over the list of the top things that I think are good spare parts to be able to have for your RV today. So let's dive right into the list, and we're going to start off with the most basic couple of items that you should have on your RV. I think every RVer should have these. Number one, it's going to be a spare tire. This one's really simple, really obvious, and your RV probably came with one already mounted on there. So you don't need to do anything extra. You just want to make sure that you have a good spare on your RV. Double check to make sure that it's still good, it's not dry rotted out, that you can actually use it if you need to on the side of the road. You don't want to be stuck somewhere because you don't have a good spare. Number two is having fuses for inside of your RV. We have the breaker panel, and we can reset those for the AC side, but a lot of things inside of our RV are dependent on the 12-volt power, and if it blows a fuse and you don't have a spare, you find out what the problem is, and you just need that fuse to be able to get it back up and going. You might be stuck if you don't keep extra fuses on hand. This sounds really simple, but we had an issue with our fridge where we had a problem with one of the fans. I was able to disconnect the fan that was causing the problem, but it still blew that fuse. So if we didn't have the fuse, we wouldn't be able to turn the fridge back on and all the food would spoil. So having those fuses on hand can keep those things inside your RV continuing to work once you solve the problem and you can replace that fuse. I'm gonna leave links down in the description so that you can find everything that we talked about today. So if you needed to resupply your RV on some of these things that you should be carrying, it's just really simple to do that. And then I'd also love to hear from you guys down in the comments of what you would not RV without that goes along these lines. What is something that you keep on hand because if it were to fail, you don't want to be left stranded. Now that brings us to the next section on our list, and these are items that are going to help you not be stranded on the side of the road. You're going to be able to get back on the road quicker. And so we're going to be looking at leaf springs, bearings, shackles, and bolts. So for us, since we have a fifth wheel, these are the components that I've seen break before on a fifth wheel to damage the suspension to where you wouldn't be able to continue driving it to go have it repaired. If we have our water heater goes out, that's one thing. We can still get it somewhere so that we can replace that or repair it. But these things are going to stop the RV dead in the water, and you're going to have to repair it there so that you can get it moving again. Now, I don't carry all these things all the time, but this was a kit that I had on the RV when we went up to Alaska. So depending on where you're traveling with your RV, this might be a kit that you want to have, even the leaf spring, because these things can be really hard to find. They might be difficult and you may not be able to find them locally, and the time and the effort to be able to get them might take a considerable amount of time. Now let's go down this list one by one. The leaf spring, we don't currently carry one. I'm probably gonna get one extra to be able to have on hand because we have had a leaf spring break on us, and it was easier to have on hand because it's difficult to find that size, the length, all these things go into it. They're not a universal fit. So finding that leaf spring that fits your specific RV can be a big game changer if one were to break. The shackles, I don't keep the shackles on hand anymore because we have the extra thick shackles, the heavy duty shackles on our fifth wheel. So I don't see those breaking. They are very robust, very sturdy. Some people switch over to them so that they don't have to worry about that anymore. You can buy a whole kit to be able to replace all your shackles. But when we had the standard shackles on our suspension on the last fifth wheel, that was something that we had to replace while we were on a trip. And the same goes for the bolts. Sometimes those don't come off as well, and you need an extra bolt on hand. So we used to keep the shackles, the bolts, and a leaf spring. Now that brings us to the bearing. So not every bearing is going to be the same for each RV. So you want to find the bearings that fit your RV, and that's why it's not a bad idea to be able to carry an extra bearing with you. We haven't had a failure in the bearings, but I have seen it with other people in other RVs, and being able to have that bearing on hand, you just need to get some grease. You can hand pack it, you can make that change, and you can fix that wheel for being able to roll down the road again. You're not going to be stuck because you can't find the right bearing. Now, these next two aren't necessarily going to leave you stranded, but they might be difficult to find, and if you need to do a quick repair before rain is going to come or something like that, it's excellent to be able to keep these on hand. So first off, since we have a TPO roof, we use the self-leveling alpha sealant on that. It makes sure that we don't void the warranty by using the sealant. So I keep this one on hand. You can see that I used it just recently. I put a screw in it that's not going to make it last for very long. I can do something to make it last longer, but I have some other work I can do on the roof that I'm going to use this up, and then I'm just going to get a new fresh one so I know I can count on it. I always like to keep one of these on hand because this isn't something you can just find at Home Depot or Lowe's. It might take you a long time to be able to find this or even find it in stock. With the supply chain issues that we've seen nowadays, sometimes these things are hard to find, and just being able to have it on hand already on your RV might keep you from a lot of water damage. And that goes too for the Eternabon tape. So I keep just a really small roll of this. I don't need a ton of it, but if we were to hit a branch or something falls on the RV in a storm or something like that, and it puts a rip in that membrane up there, we want to be able to have something that we can patch it up and dry it off, patch it up, and not have to worry about further damage happening to the RV. It's going to possibly save us a ton of money, a lot of hassle of trying to figure out what products we can have on hand in that area. This is a game changer if you have a problem in that area. Now that brings us to the miscellaneous portion of this list. And some of the things that I keep on hand are plumbing parts. So this is a backflow preventer because I've read reviews on our RV, and I know that the plastic one that is at the hot water heater fails usually after a year, so I've been waiting to put this on. It hasn't failed yet, so next time I'm doing work in that area, I'm just going to be swapping that out for this. We've had 2 plumbing leaks that I've fixed on here because I had the stuff on hand. It took me a whole 15 to 20 minutes to be able to fix it. It really wasn't a big deal, and we went back on our way. So I do have the crimping tool to be able to crimp it with PEX, so it just uses these little rings. It's really small, really light, so I can crimp on ends if I needed to. But if you didn't want the tool and you wanted to be able to help yourself in a situation, you can get these shark bite valves that will get you by in a pinch. So you can cut the pipe if you have PEX piping, you can push this on, you can stop the leak, you could still have the rest of the plumbing system and the rest of the RV. These little shark bite fittings, you could even do one that's a valve so you could turn it off and on if you needed to, can get you by in a pinch. I would go back through and replace it with the normal PEX and the tools that I have. But if I needed to, we had a leak somewhere, I can cut that pipe, pop this on, and the leak would be done. It's not gonna ruin our day. It's not gonna cause an end to the trip. This is going to save the day if we were to need it. I also keep a handful of miscellaneous electrical stuff, some of the crimp fittings, the butt splice connectors, the ones that you're able to heat up and it protects it from the weather outside. So a handful of these plumbing supplies, a handful of these electrical supplies. Links will be down in the description of some of these small things that you can pick up and create a little kit that you can have for your RV. And that's an important point because you want to have the equipment that matches for your specific RV. Like the suspension stuff that we talked about, that's specific to us in our fifth wheel. What would you need for yours? So for instance, we have the fans behind the fridge. We've already had some of those go bad. And so I bought more than one, so we keep an extra one. So if the other fan goes out, we can replace it quickly, replace the fan, replace the fuse. We're back up and running in probably about less than an hour. I know for some people that have the Schwintek like we do on the larger slide, they'll actually get an extra motor because that's an area that might fail and they don't want to have to wait for that extra motor. If you were to have a problem, you could swap it out and you can get that slide in or out, whatever you needed to do, and you didn't have to wait on a service station or a service call or have your RV tied up for months waiting at some RV dealership for one part that you could already have on hand and do the work quickly and use your RV again. Even if you need somebody's help to be able to do the job or do the project or have that skill level to help you, you would at least have all this equipment on hand so that you're not waiting on parts. So again, I am really interested in what you guys leave down in the comments, what you guys share with what you keep on the RV in regards to this same kind of thought. So I think that's gonna do it for today. Hope this list helps you guys out, whether it's thinking thinking about your suspension or the electrical, or maybe protecting the roof, having those things on hand, the plumbing, all these things, I hope that it helps you out in your RVing experience. So if you guys like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more videos about RVing, hit that subscribe button. And if we don't see you on the road, hopefully we will see you next video.